everybody, and Happy New Year! So, what are we now? This is GameGuru Classic and Max broadcast number 129. That's right, this is the first broadcast of 2023. I hope you all enjoyed your little break, and I hope you're all raring to see more game development goodness. For anyone who's joining us for the very first time, this is a little bit of a deep dive into what's going on behind the scenes, what's going on development-wise in regards to GameGuru Classic and GameGuru Max. I have a couple of things I'd like to show, and it's divided into a couple of sections. But before I say anything like that, anyone lucky enough to join us live in the live chat gets to ask some questions. Just stick a question mark at the end, please. And once I've shown and told, then we'll go through, find some questions, and maybe provide a few answers. We won't be doing the Discord for 2023. You know, it was great and it was fun, but it was sort of like a private thing, and not everyone got to see the answers because some people couldn't find the Discord link or it wouldn't work for them. So we're going to keep all the questions and answers in the live chat. It's good for look back as reference material through the catalogue of well over 120 broadcasts for GameGuru Max progress. So just stick a question mark in the live chat and I'll look and check out those a little bit later. So without further ado, we'll go into demo GameGuru Classic land. I have a few things to show off within the software, but before I do that, I just want to make mention, I haven't actually supervised the update yet, but ImGui 1.5 update is imminent. The files are now with us and we have to do a little bit of testing and a bit of uploading. So check out the news and the social feeds for when that is going to be available. Going to have a little bit of a guess here, but I think if you're on Steam, it'll be an auto update. You won't even know, but we will actually put out a little bit of a release which tells you what's different from the previous version and ImGui 1.5. So go check out that when it is available. Okay, bug fixing has been happening, and once again we have to turn to and thank both Cybernescence and Preben for doing fixes completely free of charge, helping out the community over Christmas with some additions and some fixes for GameGuru Classic. And T-Bone has also joined the party. He's also been making one or two little small tweaks and fixes as well. So thanks to all three, and I'll show you a couple of the things that have, they're not huge things, but the, you know, the little things that just try and keep that bug count to as close to zero as possible. So I've pre-launched GameGuru Max, Classic, and I think I memorized how to demonstrate these things, but I may go off track a little bit. First week of 2023, you can imagine quite a lot of plates are spinning in my head right now. So I think the first one was medieval weapons did not work. So this is the latest build. It's going to go out later once all the testing can be done as an official GameGuru Classic update. And the idea was that daggers wouldn't work. But now, as you can see, this is an old medieval curly dagger. As you can see, you can pick it up and you can attack. And all that's really good and wonderful. And something slightly related to it was weapons don't animate when light rays are in effect. So if I just drop down an Uzi, the example that was given to us in the issues board was, I think it was Death Valley, and the initial weapon you get in Death Valley is the Uzi. So I'll just drop that one down, make a huge mountain, bigger the better, and then we'll press test level. And what we're looking for is light rays. This should actually be, yeah, there you go. So if you don't know what light rays are, you see as you move around, you see all that. I've really switched it up to 11. You'll never have get light rays with this salty. But the problem before was it didn't animate a gun. Now you can see it animates like you would expect. So that is in the latest update. So keep an eye out for an announcement on that, and thanks you once again for the contributors for making those fixes. Sure, the internal team would have got to them eventually, but it's absolutely awesome that the community can beat us to it. And one last thing I'd like to show off, not really in the sense of demonstrating something, but certainly to show you this. It was a classic idea suggestion that went in, and T-Bone swept in had a look at the requirement, modified the script, submitted the scripts to the public repo for GameGuru Classic, had a quick look at it. Yep, that was great, wonderful, marked it as fixed, it's going to be in the update. And there's all, he also found time to add a show HUDs lower script as well. So it's the inverse of the hide HUDs that we've had for years, but there was never a show HUDs. So you could hide stuff, but you can never get it back. Now you've got both sides of that particular coin, so you can hide HUDs and show HUDs again. So that's GameGuru Classic. Now let's see what's going on in GameGuru Max Land. No, let's not. Let's actually take another look at what's going on in GameGuru Classic Land. Usually we spend lots and lots of time talking about GameGuru Max. Hopefully you heard me through that intro. I was just bouncing back to get you a nice formal GameGuru Classic logo, and then I remember there's probably a huge piece of music playing. Before I move on, there was one more thing I wanted to talk about. I did actually prepare a build to demonstrate this, but then I accidentally deleted it and there was just no time to put it all back together, which is the things you've seen so far and I've demonstrated and talked about. Those are done by Cybernescence and T-Bone. Preben has made some tweaks and fixes, including resurrecting the, and when I say resurrect, get it compiling and running, of what's called the ImGui version of GameGuru Classic. And just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, best thing to do is navigate you to it. So what you're looking at here on the screen is the GameGuru Classic repository, and I'm in the code tab right at the top. So for instructions on how to follow along and get this ImGui version, it's not an official one, it's just there if you want to have the ImGui version and add things and play with it. It is good in some respects, not so good in others, in the sense that there may be missing parts. But if you go to this 0.633 commits and scroll down a little bit, you're looking for the names of contributors. So as you can see, T-Bone, Cybernescence, they've been adding the contributions there. I've done a little bit here and there. And then here you'll see Plemsoft. That's good old Preben. And if you click this one, you'll actually see the name of the commit. Well, the GameGuru Classic ImGui version to run side by side, and also provide you with some instructions specifically to actually comment in these two defines and then do a full compile. Now I've also added some additional information to the changelog. It's somewhere else, but essentially another thing you've got to do is there are 5 ImGui source files that by default are excluded from the project build. You've got to highlight those, select properties, go to the exclude from build area and set them to no. That way they compile, produce the OBJ files, link with the rest of the executable, and then you get the output. And mentioning that, also make sure that when you are setting your target name, make sure it's GameGuru2.exe. And all that really means is it's a variant of GameGuru Classic that instead of using the really old BCG IDE tools, it actually uses the rather cool ImGui interface that doesn't need that separate executable. You can just run this solo and it runs GameGuru Classic without needing the GameGuru.exe and then the guru_map editor.exe. So if you feel brave and you're happy to do some compiling, go check that out. And you might find it interesting, you might find it not. You'll certainly find that there's some files missing, and maybe Preben can help you with that. But as I said, it's not officially supported at this time, but it's really great to check out this early version because it really does give you the opportunity to start adding stuff to the GameGuru Classic IDE that we couldn't really do before because of the ancients of the API we were using to produce the IDE UI elements. Now let's see what's going on in GameGuru Max Land. Okay, so trying to remember all the last couple of videos I've done. I certainly have mentioned that we added VR support for the Christmas release, so if you were lucky enough to already have a headset or you got a VR headset over Christmas, you now had a version of GameGuru Max, certainly the experimental build, which would let you play around in VR. And as I mentioned right at the start, it was an extremely very early version of it. It's like It was really just to test the OpenXR compatibility, making sure that there was no hardware issues. All the tests that we've done internally, very successful. OpenXR is definitely the future in terms of just whatever VR stuff you've got plugged in, it just finds it, configures it, and then maps it to your VR implementation. Very pleased with it. But for those who don't know what I'm talking about, a quick refresher. So let me just get into a project. I've been using this one as my little test. If anyone doesn't know what they're looking at, it's one of the HUD demos called Trapped by Synchromesh. And in VR, scary gets very scary because you're creeping around and looking around corners and you're in the middle of the horror story, not looking at it from a distance or a rectangle. So normally you see this, you'd see your back button, you save load, and then test level. If you've got a VR headset that has OpenXR compatibility, then you can do this. Go to settings, go to developer, there's a new option here called VR support, tick enable experimental preview, and this button appears. And then when you click it, and before I click it, I just want to mention, I've already configured my Steam client to own the what's called the Oculus XR runtime, because I'm using the Valve Index and that runs through Steam. So when I click this, what it's going to do, and you'll see this, maybe you can see this, it initializes the Steam VR. That's where the OpenXR runtime is living, and so Steam is handling some of the announcement notification stuff just to let me know what's going on. The reason you can't really see much at the moment is my headset is hanging off the wall. But if I wait long enough, I eventually get hit by the zombie. But I digress. So yeah, that's using the OpenXR runtime for the Valve Index, and you see it's on standby. I can close that one down. And as I said, it's an early implementation of VR support. One thing I do want to mention, and I hadn't mentioned it previously, and it'll be super useful to you. If you do manage to find the button, run it, and your headset's working fine, but you find yourself near the ceiling, and so everything else looks like you're a giant and everything's really tiny, it's because of your VR setup, your room setup, whether it's sitting, standing, and where your headset is in relation to the height from the floor, and that's not always configured correctly. Rather than you go out and configure room and come back in, we've added some nice little shortcuts in GameGuru Max. When you're in test level and you've got your headset on, just use page up and page down, and it makes a manual adjustment to that, how far the floor is away from you when you're sat down at the keyboard. So just page up and page down, and you can line it up. Easiest way to line it up is get a level, drop in a character, run up to the character in VR, make sure that your eye line is lined up with their eye line, and then you'll pretty much be there. So I just wanted to mention that there was some secret functionality in this early version. But there are extra things that we need to do before we can call VR finished. Obviously handling of objects and weapons, and also the display of the HUDs. How do you know what your health is? How do you know what your weapon selection is? What's your ammo? HUDs are handled very differently in VR than they are on a monitor. So that's also a thing that needs to go in. And maybe another look at the refinement of the controls. Is everybody happy with the move and turn system? Or do people absolutely insist on a teleport feature? Which, if you've ever played Half-Life Alyx, it uses the teleport method because a lot of people report it produces less nausea. And of course, as I've mentioned it before, the ability to configure. So remapping keys, remapping controls and controllers, all those sorts of things. So those are the things that we consider to be largely missing in the early VR support. And we're going to add those in, and then we can say we've got a decent first version for VR. And then you can use GameGuru Max to make your own VR games. So that's it for the demo section. Just want to report as well, just one last thing, because it's the only thing I've not mentioned, is the RPG game mechanics. So that's the other leg, it's the final piece before we can call it a version 1, and a lot of work is going on in the background for that as well. That's split roughly into two sections. The front end, so what I mean by that is you want to create your inventory screens and your crafting screens and your shop screens. That's 2D. That's your front stuff, your buttons, your displays, your images, your text. And you've got different screens in your RPG game where you want to create and lay those out and make it look like your unique game. And then there's the back end, the internal stuff, the logic. How does that work? And that's being divided up into scripts that relate to the screen, and then scripts that are in the game itself. And those scripts we now call behaviors, and that's how that part of the logic is controlled. But before we can start announcing any more details on that, we need to figure out a really cool way of managing all the data. Global data for the player, global data for the individual levels or the game as a whole, and making sure it all works really nicely, and above all else, user configurable. Nothing hard-coded by us. You go in and add extra attributes as you see fit, create the scripts around those, and your game can carry on. You won't need TGC to help you add an additional hard-coded this, that, and the other. And that's the phase we're in right now. The back end and the front end. The front end will be super generic, so you can create as many HUDs as you want. Maybe you just want an inventory and that's it. Or maybe you want 13 different kinds of shop front. It would be up to you. You just create another screen and add all the gadgets that you need for that screen. So that's the work that's been going on in RPG, but I'll be happy to reveal more once we've got something on screen and I can demonstrate visually, because it's all right me talking about it, but there's nothing like a visual demonstration. So hopefully you've collected together lots of lovely questions. So let's move on to Q&A and see if I can answer some of them. Okay, I have a live chat somewhere. I have reconfigured my office over Christmas and now my monitor's on the other side. But hopefully my brain doesn't get too twisted. And yeah, perfect. Okay, I'm going to start out at the top. First of all, is Zach in the house? Yes, he is. All right, Zach. Right, we'll play by the rules of whoever asked the question first, Zach remembered them and has moved them down. So it's done nice and fair. So these are the questions that don't immediately have answers right now, and it starts with: is there any roadmap for GameGuru Max V1 or estimated release? No, there is no estimated release. I've already hinted at it's VR and RPG, which are the two missing pieces in our minds. There's also some small tweaks here and there and everywhere. Quite a lot of bug fixes to go through. So we're basically saying we want all the highs fixed, RPG mechanics implemented with the aforementioned customizability capabilities, and basic version 1 of VR. And then we're going to be looking at it and saying, is that VR, is that version 1? If everyone in the internal team is happy that we can call a VR1, then we will leave early access. So it's not exactly a date, but that's the estimated release condition. So hopefully that was of use. Question from Loretta: will we still be able to import GameGuru Classic into Max? Yeah, that was one of the things we wanted to do. So if you've got a project in Classic and you are still using Classic and you're just checking out Max as a fun development interest, but eventually want to move your projects from Classic to Max, that is still the intention. It's been set to a lower priority whilst we finish all of the various functionalities on Max. There's no point doing a conversion process if we don't know what we're converting to. But we're very nearly to the end of that process, and then we can look at that conversion hiccups. It won't be 100% forward compatible, but certainly if you've got a very large game project with a lot of detail in your terrain, a lot of objects, and you just want them in Max to carry on, that's basically the goal. Some things you'll have to recreate, but I'm afraid that will be unavoidable, but it's still the intent. Another question from earlier, thanks Zach. When is there going to be a buildable Max in GitHub? Great question. It actually is on my list for this month, actually. It's the Visual Studio 2022. So we're upgrading the Visual Studio requirement to 2022, which is currently free from Microsoft. And we have to update all the source code as well. So we did a build for Christmas. We're pretty happy with that. We're in the middle of breaking it up again to put in the new customizable RPG mechanics. And so we want to get that finished and get it all repaired and put back in its box. Once that's done and it looks neat and it's no worse than the Christmas build, then getting that version updated on GitHub is one of the tasks that are going to be done, because then you can start contributing, looking at the code and making improvements, not having to wait on us. So that's definitely on the very, very short-term roadmap. Here's another question. This is from Tom. Will you be adding magic spells at RPG? Also, will RPG add the ability to add items to certain body slots, e.t. like head, waist, trousers, that gives bonus stats, etc.? Yes. Not though in the way you might think. Maybe 10 years ago we would have just hard-coded all that and you got instantly access to magic spells and slots for armour and the like. We've learned since there's no point us hard-coding anything, because the moment we do that it's already out of date. So over Christmas I have been sketching on lots of notepads, and team members likewise have been also having thoughts and doing their own sketches. Thanks, Netcrim. And together we're pulling together something that's super customizable. And as part of my drafts and designs, I have already sketched out how you'd be able to do magic, collecting magic scrolls, magic potions, mana, controlling how fast you can use the magic and all the rest of it. Also things like armor, so you can attach things to your arms and body and head and legs in order to give yourself more damage resistance and more capabilities when you're running around your RPG game. But as I said, we're developing the building blocks, we're building the core mechanics which would allow that to be created by you. So you get to decide what kind of magic you want in your games, you get to decide what kind of armor is appropriate for your game. We may help along the road in the future. Let's say we give you a pack of 2D HUD graphics. So you have like pieces of armour and you can assemble it together in one of your HUD screens. We may be able to help you there, or you may be an artist, you can do it yourself. So that's the approach we're taking. I'm going to give you the building blocks, we're going to let you create the million variations of what an RPG screen is to you. Okay, another question. This is from Nightfall. How is DX12 going? Well, if you tune in to say, I don't know, say the last 5 broadcasts, you'll find out that we put a freeze on the DX12 work in order to finish GameGuru Max version 1 and tackle the, what is it now, over 400 bugs that have been accumulating. And you'll find in one of our recent news posts that was the decision made by the whole internal team, and I think it's the right one. Once we get to version 1 and we have a finished product, then we'll look at DX12 and see whether it's worth it. I think it is. I think that it's worth it to get onto the latest version of DirectX and the performance that may come with it. And also, and it's not mentioned in the question, but the Wicked Engine also has a lot of cool new features, and Wicked Engine is only DX12 now. So it's basically a double whammy. When we start working on DX12 again, we're also working with the new Wicked Engine. The Wicked Engine has transformed substantially since we last built our game engine off it, so there is a lot of work there. As you saw previously in early broadcasts, that work was underway, but it turned out the work was much bigger than we originally anticipated. It wasn't a quick slap in the new API and carry on, it was slap in the new UI and break 50% of the game's engine. So we're finishing the product first, the original one we talked about long time ago, and then we'll look at DX12 and find out which features we really want and how we go about it, without taking another 6 months to a year. Here's another question. Will there be options to edit, create shaders somewhere along the roadmap? Yeah, create and edit shaders. You could do. It's not impossible, and in fact, the object files that actually come with GameGuru Max, you could create your own versions of them and modify the shaders. It's just, if we do our job right, there wouldn't be a need to create new shaders, because we kind of tick all the boxes of all the effects and surface details that you want in your game engine. And it is pretty tricky stuff. When you change a shader, there's a lot of hooks that you're going to look after to make sure that you're not ignoring something or adding something that'll break other things in the whole shader pantheon. It's not just one shader that does one thing. You've got like 13, 15, 20 shaders all working in concert to produce one single thing. So it's pretty dangerous territory to think about creating new shaders. Editing existing ones is probably stage 1, and then creating whole new ones way down the road. But as to our immediate roadmap and what we're thinking about, it's really just to get to version 1, and we're not including the ability to edit or create new shaders as part of that version 1 package. Here's a question. This is from Retro6502. I just recently phoned GameGuru and I was looking to get some of the DLC packs. Was it intention? Some of the sales on Steam ended early? Question mark. Should run through 1/5. Yeah, not sure on our promotion plans for 2013, but in the past we run a launch discount. I think it lasted a week, and then it goes to full price, and it will basically stay there for quite a long time because the artists have done a lot of hard work and we want to see them rewarded for their efforts. And then at some point, maybe as the sales start to drop, we probably will introduce promotions down the road. So if you're not happy to pay the full price to the artist, if you wait long enough, you can pay some discounted amount in the future. It just means you don't get access to the latest, greatest, freshest art on the block. And hope is that we're going to keep adding DLC in 2023. So if you was in this situation 12 months from now, you would already have quite a large selection of DLC to choose from, which is something I'm particularly looking forward to, especially with the success of the Wasteland DLCs and the Off-World Station. Really picks up what you can do with GameGuru Max, even during early access. Intentional, smiley. No worries. So, is there any more questions, or have I managed to get all the way to the end and both the ears off literally everyone? Yeah, I think that's the end of it. Wow, wonderful. Thank you very much for all your questions. We're at 26 minutes into the hour. Thank you for all your questions. See, I'm rushing the outro really quickly so I can end the broadcast before a new question shows up. So thanks very much for all of that. I will be back next Wednesday at 7 p.m. GMT. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. I certainly did. So until next Wednesday at 7 p.m. GMT, I'll say goodbye and thank you.